Yo, what's going on, guys? Let's see what's working, what's not. Trying to wait for a few people to come in. Nothing going on too much today. Just wanted to kind of check in and see what's going on, and maybe I'll try to answer some questions. Haven't been releasing too many videos on the YouTube channel as of late, and maybe I'll try to fix that. How's the audio? Might be peaking a little bit. Maybe I'm speaking too close to the mic. But greetings, everyone. Maybe I'll give a quick update as to what the heck I've been doing for the last month. But basically, the reason why I haven't been putting up any videos is probably because I've been working on a kind of a side contract job, if you will. And that's been occupying quite a bit of time for me. Yeah, it feels good to just start coding again for an actual project that you're actually getting paid for. A lot of different things about coding for a real project versus one of these courses is just really different. For example, I think one of the biggest things I have to worry about is making sure that the code is clean and easy to kind of understand if it's someone else looking at the code, making sure that they can just dive in and make modifications to the code if they want to. Whenever I build out these courses, I try to make it as simple and straightforward as possible. And, that's the goal that we should all try to achieve at least. So cool. Hello everyone. Hello from Mexico. It seems like we have Joseph or Jafet Castillo, Diego Garcia, and also Luis Santiago from Mexico. We got some Barbados. And how am I doing? I'm doing all right. How are you guys doing? What kind of projects, what kind of difficulties have you guys been running into lately? And when I say you guys, I'm also including the female developers out there also. I don't really, have a speech preference. I just say you guys to be all inclusive, even though that's a term that's kind of weird lately. But, I guess I'll leave the politics out of the stream. At least today. Are you guys interested in my political opinions? If you sit on YouTube and you watch videos all day, you start to get into these weird political holes where people start discussing the most random thing that doesn't even matter in real life. And the ultimate thing that I've come to realize is that the internet and what you see in reality is just totally different nowadays. Like if you go on Twitter and you read all the tweets, you go on Instagram is like the vanity portion of the internet. Twitter is the political place to go voice your opinions on being offended. And YouTube seems to be a weird hole that you can get into. So in California, there's this new initiative that's being pushed into the school system where they're deciding on teaching, I guess, 15 genders in kindergarten, I think it's kindergarten, not preschool. And they're deciding to try to get that in. So I guess I'll refrain from giving my total opinion on that, but I feel like it's kind of weird. It's progressing to a point where no one really knows what's okay based on their own feelings or what's okay based on what's best for the kids. Strange times. So let's see. I guess what I'll try to do. Oh, where's my phone? Oh no, my phone. Phone here. if you're curious what the new setup is, basically I moved all my stuff into the kitchen. What you see in the back there is like a cheap old microwave. I do plan on moving very soon. So, all that stuff back there is just the kitchen, the sink, and little teapot, electronical tea kettle. Is that what you'll call it? It's that thing right there. I think I'm getting really fat. Getting a lot of weight. That's definitely not good. Where you got your voice over training? There's really nothing secret about the voice. I think the voice that's coming into the stream right now is the truest form of my voice because I don't have any post-processing being done right now. The key thing, if you guys want to start making tutorials out there, the key thing about setting up a good video is actually the sound. So especially in a long form video, you want to make sure you capture like the best sound that you can. And buying like a decent microphone is pretty important to that. So if you guys want, this microphone setup, I don't really recommend one of these complicated setups. Like this thing is in total about, I guess if you count this little boom arm thing, so this little boom arm, in total it costs I think $500. Now I do it because I really want to capture the best audio for you guys to really be able to understand what I'm saying, and also not have too much background noise. So hopefully you guys appreciate the little bit of time I spent on doing this research. Yeah. I mean, I really like doing like electronical research anyways. Like for example, building on computers, and currently working on this Hackintosh. Did you guys see my Twitter posts this week? How many of you guys out there have upgraded to Xcode 10.2 already? I've been trying to get a little bit more familiar with the Swift 5 changes, and it's always a good idea to not get too surprised when the actual Swift 5 language is released, and you just want to make sure you stay ahead of the game. So Swift 5 is coming out. I'm not exactly sure what the changes are. It should be backwards compatible with Swift 4.2. I know there might be some slight breaking changes, but it shouldn't be as bad as it was from Swift 3 to Swift 3 to Swift 4 actually wasn't that bad either. It was really Swift 2.3 to Swift 4 that caused a lot of code breaking changes. So how many of you guys have actually started using Swift 5 already? If you want to download the beta Xcode 10.2, you can head on to the Apple download website. So what is it here? Let's see. Okay, what's going on? iPhone XR. Anyhow, I think you guys know how to get to the developer website for apple.com. Elephant Boy says, no code related, but can you thank Lindsay Booth for making me a pizza just now? Well, thank you, Mrs. Lindsay Booth. Oh man, I was just actually thinking about buying a pizza last night. So hungry. I think I was watching a video on people that have bad diets and people that are getting to be super obese. And a pizza, like a meat lover's pizza, is a major culprit of having a bad diet. Let's see, a Jenkins tutorial. Do you guys really want to see a Jenkins tutorial? How many of you guys have done like CI, continuous integration? Downloaded Xcode, but haven't had time to tinker around. Yeah, me too. I could go for one of those right now. How about next time I do a live stream, I get a big old pizza and we can all have lunch together. It's about 10 a.m. for me. I haven't really had anything other than like a nice cup of instant mixed coffee, which isn't the best, but it'll do for now. I am new to your channel. Well, you're most certainly welcome. If you're really just learning how to build out iOS apps, this is probably the best channel to do it. I might be a little bit biased. Yeah. Let's build the Uber. You've already been able to run the beta Xcode version for Swift in your Mac with Sierra. So yeah, I can't run Xcode 10.2 on my High Sierra current computer setup. I'm buying some extra parts for my Hackintosh so that I can actually install a Xcode Mojave on a new hard drive. And yeah, so the whole process of setting up Hackintosh is a little convoluted. And yeah, so typically what you want to do is you want to have a working copy on like one hard drive. And if you can test a different installation of Mac OS on a different hard drive, you should do that. Now, I currently have, I do have other hard drives, but I went out and I bought another 1 terabyte SSD for like $120. So whenever that comes in, I have another USB stick that I have to set up the OS Mojave installer, and then try to also set up the Hackintosh configuration for the installation process, turn on some special configuration settings to make sure that things are working. I feel like that's going to take maybe half a day to get correct. Usually it takes a whole day, but seeing that I've done it for High Sierra, I don't see it taking an entire day again. Actually, I think it took like an entire week for High Sierra. The hardest part is getting the graphics display to work correctly. Everything is just a standard Mac. So when you just, Xcode, iOS, anything really is just standard. You just download the installer, you run it, everything's working. I've already like published some, I didn't publish, but I sent out a lot of like test flight builds on this Hackintosh. That there's nothing really different about the machine. It works just like a standard Mac once you get all the things working. A video on build configurations and using Mac OS. So I also plan on making some Mac OS tutorials. So whenever I can do that, that'll be awesome. And if you guys are interested, let me know. What do you do to improve your speaking skills? You speak really well. So I really don't like public speaking, actually. And obviously, I don't think I'm any good at speaking. This is just normal, everyday conversation, really. I think one of the things that you have to get over if you want to start making videos is like how to actually talk to a camera, which is something different. Yeah. I do love MVVM. Yeah, I think MVVM is probably the best way to really architect an application out so that you get the best out of MVC, clean separation of components, and something that's somewhat easy to maintain. So you're probably going to have to throw in some reactive programming into the mix of MVVM. Otherwise, it's really hard to like trigger events from your review model and make sure that the state of your review model is clean. So my challenge has been implementing data source in a UI collection view cell, which is owned by a table view cell. So this is actually like really easy. I mean, the thing about computer science is anything that you think is hard, once you see the solution and then you run through it a couple times by yourself, you realize, oh, this is just like A plus B mixed in with C. And once you understand the C component, it's like, oh, this is actually very easy. And that's what I find with all different styles of programming. Once you understand the key things that you need to do to get to the destination, it's actually not that hard. I think that one of the difficult aspects of programming in general for people that aren't programmers to understand is that you really have to be comfortable with the computer telling you that you've like screwed up with your code. You know, I remember when going to college, it's just like you're constantly struggling with whatever the assignment is that the professor gives you. And if you're not willing to sit there in front of a computer for like 10 hours, you know, constantly trying to figure out how the program works, you're not going to get very far. So, you know, when I'm offline and I'm preparing all these courses, it's really a lot to prepare. You guys don't see the amount of time that goes into the preparation, but there's certainly a lot there. Can we have MVVM pattern tutorial? So the Tinder Firestore course goes through a couple of different scenarios of MVVM. I believe the link is down below if you want to check out that course. It is currently $60 to enroll and watch the videos. There's about 50 videos right now, so I think it's definitely worth your money. Could you be open to doing some one-on-one mentoring, problem-solving SF? I can trade personal training services. How dare you imply that I need personal training services? How dare you? Mentoring, problem-solving SF. So I live in South San Francisco, and you probably know that it's actually really far. South San Francisco is about half an hour, and to drive into San Francisco, find a parking spot, that entire trip is probably $20, right? Even if you take the BART, the public transportation, it takes $10 to get there, like an hour to get to the city. I really don't see myself going back into San Francisco for anything, really. I really hate commuting to San Francisco. For anyone out there that wants to move to the Silicon Valley, San Francisco Bay Area, if you want to be a programmer, like there's a really big chance that you're going to work in San Francisco. Like I would say there's a 20 to 30% chance that you're going to work in San Francisco as a programmer, because that's just where all the jobs are. And you really have to consider where exactly you're going to live. If you want to live in San Francisco, you're going to have to pay like $3,000 to $4,000 for a 1-bedroom studio apartment, which is about, 500 square feet for like $4,000 really. And, that obviously there are a lot of trade-offs. You don't have to commute. You can just walk to your office from your apartment, but you are paying a little bit of a premium to have that luxury and convenience. The other option is to live in some farther city like maybe like Fremont, Oakland, East Bay, outside of the city. And ultimately that's going to take you like at least 45 minutes to take the public transportation and get in. So if you're considering moving to Silicon Valley and finding a job, you're probably going to have to, go through that daily. And that's kind of why you get paid a lot of money. It's that daily grind and you also stay very late in these computer programming jobs. Like it's very typical to stay like 10 to 11 hours and get paid a salary. There's no overtime out here. And the other option is to work in somewhere like the South Bay, Mountain View, where Google and Facebook and all those big companies are. So that's another option. But the commute is still kind of killer. Like, you have to drive in a one-on-one the highway. It takes a while. Like, the average commute for people out there, I think it's like 45 minutes, which is pretty typical, right, nowadays. One of the nicest things about working by myself, preparing courses for you guys, is that I'm no longer wasting all this commute time. Like, every day wasting like 2 hours. By the time you get to the office, you're super tired. Once you get off work, you take the commute, get home, and man, you're just wasted. I mean, not wasted, but energy-wise. Sinlok. Hey man, seems you are chatting from the kitchen. Yeah. Kitchen is exactly where I am. I'm actually in the dining room. I have a really small apartment. Okay, you did a video where iOS connects directly to MySQL database and performing queries to the database. I guess maybe I'll talk about this question for a little bit, because when I was starting to learn how to program, this is something that I thought was this is the process that I actually had assumed was the correct process to communicate to a MySQL database from your phone. I kind of thought that way too, because it only makes sense, right? You have a database with a bunch of data, you have your phone, how do you actually communicate with the database? And that's a very easy mistake to make. Now the correct way to approach this entire database mobile application thing is you have to have a backend in between your mobile application and the actual database. So typically a backend might be like Node.js or Rails or PHP, something like that. So you know exactly when to communicate with your database directly from your mobile app. And I don't know, when did I actually learn that? I guess I've always known that since I've learned the LAMP stack. So Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. So yeah. How many of you guys know the LAMP stack? So LAMP, LAMP. Hackintosh and Dell versus XPS versus MacBook Pro. What's a Hackintosh and Dell XPS? I don't know what the specifications for a Dell XPS, what they are. I might get a MacBook Pro sooner or later. Maybe I'll wait for the next year's model. One thing I don't like about that MacBook Pro is the keyboard. Like having touched the keyboard on those new laptops, I just find it really, really depressing. No pun intended, but pressing on those keyboards, I don't like it. What is the difference between iOS developer and a software engineer? Is iOS development a subset of software engineering? If not, where is the line? So I received this Facebook message the other day. So I don't know if you guys know this or not, but I get quite a few of these message requests from Facebook Messenger and also Instagram. And I don't use private messaging in these applications. So if you want to get a response from me, don't use social media messaging, because it's a huge distraction. I don't like being distracted all that much. It just kills your productivity when you try to respond to these messages. But anyways, someone was asking me about, or someone told me when they. So basically, this person is a junior iOS developer, and he recently quit his job as an iOS developer. Now, the reason why he quit his job is because he realized that after working there, in addition to iOS development, he has to learn, I believe it's Python and also some web, HTML, JavaScript programming. Now, that's a realization that you might come to after 2 to 3 years of programming. Like iOS development might seem really fun to you, and it is. And I think there's a good percentage of jobs that you can actually survive just doing straight iOS programming and doing nothing else but that. Now, like having said that, that's extremely limiting. So if you want to really expand your career and get further up on that corporate ladder and start becoming an architect, you really have to understand how to become a full stack engineer. So you might need to learn PHP, Python, and then also a lot of this business layer logic. And you don't exactly just want to be a strict iOS developer. Now, again, you can get really far just being super niche and focus on iOS development. But overall, you're gonna have to learn like a lot of different ways of coding and how to do all this stuff as like a software developer. And it's always my recommendation to learn more and more. I think furthermore, it's really fun. Like I'm always suspect of people that don't want to learn full stack programming, because if they're really interested in software development, they should truly understand the entire stack just to make things efficient. Hello from Russia. Hello, Ivanov. Can you explain OAuth 2 and other auth server protocols? OAuth 2, I don't really think OAuth 2 is that easy to understand, really. The basic idea behind OAuth 2 is like you need to verify with some service and they give you a token, and that token is responsible for like making server requests on behalf of a user. Now, another like feature of OAuth 2 is these tokens will expire and you have to ask for some kind of refresh token to refresh your access token session. And that entire process is something that's implemented by a lot of big companies out there like Facebook, Google, Twitter, Instagram. They all do this. It's not really that fun, actually, to be going to dive deep into that. Like, the Let's Build That App.com website, we have Facebook login. Looking back on building out that entire login page, I kind of regret including Facebook login. Even that, this was about 3 years ago, before the entire Facebook scandal. So I actually made a conscious decision to include Facebook login because I thought, yeah, a lot of places actually have this easier way of logging in. And yeah, so looking back on it, I would probably not have made that decision to include Facebook. Yeah, I just feel like people are kind of not using Facebook that much nowadays anyways. Would it be easier to move to iOS dev with Kotlin experience? I don't know. I guess with any type of experience is typically good. What do I want to say about this? I guess I won't roast people today. I think having done this for so long, I have a different mentality from a lot of people. And what I mean is, there's really nothing special about Kotlin Android development versus iOS dev versus React development, web, backend. You're literally just going on Google and searching for these answers. So yeah, I don't really classify languages the way people do. You're literally, if you understand the language of Googling, that's the most important thing you need. Like that is the ultimate language. And people don't talk about that enough. It's most important thing that you should learn how to do early on is to figure out how to navigate your way through the Google query results stack, and how to decipher what's useful, look at the dates of these posts, see the the thumbs up versus thumbs down ratio. That's more important than, looking at Apple documentation, really. What's the right way to do paging on a collection view to load more items? Like you might do in a table view. I'm using view for a supplementary element of kind to create a pull refresh footer. Oh, yeah, that's typically what I do as well. So I have a footer at the bottom, and then it has the spinner. And as things are loading, as you are loading things, you have a height for the footer. And if you're not loading things, then your footer is just, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain, but once you see the solution, it's pretty simple. Also, you said that you left in-house job. So how do you now make money? So, the website does pretty well. All of you guys are really doing a good job in supporting all the courses that we have online. So, the amount of money that we make here is, it's good. Really happy to help you guys further along your career. And I just don't think that there's enough resources out there that helps guide regular iOS developers that know the basics, right? You know how to work with UIKit, you know how to put together a list, but how do you take that skill set to the next level? And that's really what I'm trying to provide. I think when I was starting out, obviously 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there just weren't a lot of resources online. I mean, I still remember those days when the software development landscape, the tutorial landscape, was really just not super fleshed out. Footer view for collection and content offset and bottom. Yeah. One of those questions that I don't get anymore is why do I use UI collection view over UI table view? And I feel like a lot of you guys have realized by now that the collection view is so much better. And I think the reason why you get a lot of those questions is because it's just a lot of people come from the UI table view tutorials, which are always out there because it's easy to set up. And it's just much more flexible. That's true. So I plan on putting out a tutorial out there today. Let's see, we have Diego Garcia with the $60 purchase. Thank you, Diego Garcia Ramos, for the Tinder course enrollment. Just super thank you for everyone that's supporting me and what I do on this website. Or not YouTube, but the letsbuildthatapp.com website. I am currently doing a lot of research on new things that I want to teach you guys. So lately I've been studying how to put together a Node.js backend. And I knew how to do it before, but just doing like more research on how to persist a local session on a backend using Node.js, and how to securely store a user inside of a MongoDB, and then how to actually make things work. So maybe I can show you a little bit of a preview as to what that looks like. I think this is a little bit out of focus here. Let me try to dial the focus back a little bit. There we go. And okay. Have you ever used cherry pick as a Git command? So I've never used cherry pick through Git directly, but you're always going to use it. Well, actually, I have used cherry pick, but so for those of you guys that don't know what exactly cherry picking is from Git, basically the idea is, let's say you're working on like 5 different branches with 5 different developers on your team, right? And on those 5 different branches, like let's say your developer B has a change that is in his branch. When you do a cherry pick, you actually cherry pick that change in his branch, and then you cherry pick it into your own branch, let's say. And when you do this cherry picking, you're basically taking that entire commit, and then it takes that same commit with the same hash and that same marker on that commit and just brings it into your branch. Now, whenever you do this, you have to make sure that the code will compile and that the merge is clean. And then when you merge that branch into your branch, eventually, you want to this cherry pick change. Usually, I think half of the times, it's okay, and the other half of the time, it's like the ordering of the commit doesn't really make sense. So whenever I've had to do the git commands, that's another huge thing that you have to understand as an iOS developer. Like, Git is very powerful. Yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that. I remember teaching a lot of students how to use Git for the very first time. Super confusing. No one really knows what the hell Git is for, why people use it, and what the benefit of Git is really. And you don't really appreciate Git until you work in a team of at least like 5 different people. That's kind of my understanding of it. What are my thoughts on RX Swift, specifically coupled with MVVM? So I really like MVVM. I'm not like a super big fan of RX Swift and their fundamental axioms as to how things are observed. Like I liked RX Swift's 1.0 version. I think now they're on RX Swift 3.0, and it's evolved to a place where it no longer reflects what reactive programming was meant. At least the syntax doesn't reflect what the core concepts should have been. And it's very typical. I understand how they evolved to where they are right now, because more and more people started using RX Swift, and different companies, like different projects, required different features. And now when you look at RX Swift, that entire library it's pretty confusing if you want to just get started with. Like, if you're just trying to get started with a simple RX Swift project, I feel like it's overly complicated, and it's very overwhelming, difficult to approach as a new project. And that's something that you really want to avoid as a library. Maybe it's gotten better, but I feel like 1.0 was really good, and now it's difficult to get into. The future of the IT industry, according to you. This is a really general, broad question. But as you can see, right, starting from 2000 or maybe like 19, let's just say the year 2000, the internet just kind of got started. Well, it got started a lot earlier than that, but 2000, we had a lot of .com booms and busts. And over the last 15, 20 years, we've been accelerating the process of getting more things online and expanding the networks between different people around the world. So as you can kind of see, that process is just accelerating faster and faster over time. Now, if you think that the IT industry is going to crash someday, you have to provide some very specific reasons as to why you think that. Because everything that has been going on for the last 20 years is saying that more people are getting into IT, internet is becoming more important, more vital to your everyday life. Like, you think about it, you carry this thing that has the power of the internet in your hands every day. and you don't leave your house without one of these internet devices. So just think about that. There's really no reason to predict the internet slowing down. It's only getting faster and more people are getting into it. Tamasha, when drink coffee. Where do you know this word from? I don't know if I've said tamasha. I don't know what that word means. Could you please make a tutorial on crash report and symbolicate crash reports? Are people still symbolicating their crash reports? This feels like something that was left in 2013. Crash Analytics from Twitter used to do this, and now Google Analytics, I think Firebase has a crash reporting now. Lucas Garland, I'm having my first job interview tomorrow. Do you have any general tips? So first, Swift job interview. I think you have to be able to understand the very basic questions of Swift, like what's the difference between a struct, a class, what is asynchronous calls, how do you load data into a list such as a table view or a collection, and I guess you'll have to do some code challenging exercise in Swift to a lot of people say that we should not do whiteboarding code exercises anymore, and I fall on the fence, or I'm kind of on the fence, but I lean more towards still having these exercises. And the reason why we have these coding exercises is to determine your level of programming. And when we're interviewing 10 different people for the same position, then we really want to hire the person that's the right fit for the job. We don't exactly want the best programmer, but we want someone that's able to be able to socialize with the rest of the team, be able to verbalize what they want done and what their requirements are. And if they're ever getting stuck, right, that's the most important thing. If a programmer is stuck and he's not able to communicate with people why he's getting stuck and what kind of help he needs, then that's really going to slow down the entire team. So not only do you have to be a pretty good programmer, you also want to, just show that you can communicate your needs and what you need to have done to help the company further their initiatives. So, not the most important thing to be the best programmer, but I think having the ability to communicate with your direct manager, your boss, and other teammates, that's a very important skill that not a lot of people talk about. No storyboard saves me. So let me know in the chat how many of you guys are still using the storyboards. Hit a +1 if you're still using a storyboard, +2 if you're completely abandoning the storyboard and you're just doing the code, pure programmatic approach, or if hit a +3 if you're using a hybrid approach like React Native or Flutter, and +4 if you're using a hybrid storyboard programmatic approach. So for me, if I'm just building out a project for myself, I like to do things pure programmatically. And the reason for that is because clients always demand certain changes that they want inside of your app. And as a developer, it's very easy to change the code. So let's say the font, you want the font to be changed, right? You just do font equals something for all your components and it's all changed. Now, if someone else wants to do that, then we're getting a lot of +2s here. So we have some +1s, people that are still on the storyboard, which is perfectly fine. The biggest benefit of a storyboard is you can make the changes visually. And for someone that's not a coder, they can actually go inside of your project and make those changes. So that's easy. But it's my strong belief that if you're working for a company, only the developers touch the code. No designer is going to touch your storyboard files. And even if you're not in a big company, it's very rare that a designer actually touches your storyboard files. And if they are, you have to be really questioning why they actually have access control to these to the source code. I would be very concerned about how that is. So we have a lot of +2s. We have some hybrid +4s. Cool. I do still plan on making a Flutter tutorial, seeing how Flutter is now 1.0. I'll try to make some more tutorials on how to do that. What's up? What's the best degree for software engineering? I don't really know. I don't know anymore. The Black Coder. So plus Jim Girth, +1 if you're a storyboard, +2 if you're a programmatic code. Not that it really matters. No one's judging. Yeah. The general trend, the general path for people to follow is, you get into iOS development because of all the storyboard tutorials out there. And then your project gets more and more complicated. You have custom views, custom components, and you have to build things out programmatically because it's all custom. And then you realize that, custom is actually pretty easy. Why don't I just do this with the rest of my project? And turns out, it's actually easier. So once you go through that entire process, you'll kind of see the full picture as to why people choose different ways of doing things. And it's perfectly fine to go in between, whatever you want. And what do I think about server-side Swift? So I was looking into server-side like Vapor and Kitura from IBM. I don't like it. The reasons I guess I don't like server-side Swift is because when you're trying to learn server-side programming, it's really important. Like the priority that you want to have for server-side learning is you want to have as many reliable resources as possible. Currently, I can't say that Swift server-side resources are actually that reliable. I think Vapor 3 just came out, and they're now using this heavy promise async style programming, which if you're not comfortable with async and promises, it's going to be really hard to actually understand. And so the reason why Node.js is like very popular with people is because it's super, super easy to learn. And that's really the first thing that I would recommend. And I'll be releasing some courses on Node.js for anyone that wants to learn backend. So +1 in the chat, +1 if you want to learn Node.js. It's something that I really recommend that people do. Not only is it super helpful for interviews, so if you can put that how to build out a legit backend on your resume, and during the interview you can actually verbalize why you built out a backend, then super impressive. Like think about it, if you're going into an interview room and they ask you, well, what are your skills? Well, I can build out the iOS front end, and I know that you might have a possible backend developer on your team right now, but I also work on the backend language as well. So the backend service is super important. Ruby on Rails ROR is better. So a lot of people have abandoned Ruby on Rails in favor of things like, some people will have gone Node.js, some have gone Google Golang. And there's still a large amount of people that use Rails because it's also very easy to get into. But a lot of different options. I think Swift backend falls very, very, very far down that entire hierarchy. I would say Swift is what? Swift backend. I would say that's probably like the sixth option for me. But I can understand if you're just getting into development and the only language that you know is Swift, then sure, why not? Just try to get into Swift as best as you can. Best practices with Node.js. It's a best tutorial to do. So I really don't know what the best practices are for Node.js yet. And I don't really want to focus on things like best practices because a backend server development is it's totally different compared to mobile development. Yeah, there's a lot of different best practices to follow, and yeah, maybe I'll go through a couple of different videos on that myself. I really have to learn some of the best practices myself. Make more videos on Flutter. I remember when I was working on Flutter, I thought it was really easy to learn. And like compared to things like so React Native to me feels very hard. Honestly speaking, I don't like learning React Native. I just never really got into. I think the learning curve for React Native is steep. Let's see. A couple more questions before I get off the stream and head over to the gym. Can I make a video collection view self-selection transition like we see in Netflix? I've got an instant Firebase course, but can you go a little bit deeper? Yeah, I was looking at the Netflix app last night too. I feel like maybe I'll go through an entire Netflix clone. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Do I agree that most people don't understand Apple's MVC and instead really try to get this type of architectural pattern? They simply switch to MVVM, Viper. So my whole idea on all of these architecture patterns is, I think all of these patterns are really silly, actually. Like honestly, no one really cares about MVC, MVVM, or Viper. It's only for people that don't really truly understand how this corporate life is. You know, for example, when you're working at like a software company, no one talks about MVC or MVVM. I don't think. From my experience, it's a rarely discussed topic. There's just some guy decided on one way of doing things, and that approach is just what people use at the company. And it's usually like some custom pattern of a mixture of everything. So, you know, that's just how things are. Yeah. Again, I find architecture questions really silly. The reason why architecture questions are really just, it's kind of like a waste of time to answer these questions is because you're trying to find like one solution that fits all. And in software, in the engineering, as you can see, we have like 50 freaking different languages to build one single thing, right? How many languages do we need for a server-side backend? We have like 20. So there's obviously very different nuances to different solutions that you're trying to build. So trying to come up with one solution that fits all, it's a rather silly thing to do. Yeah, so Cedric, I kind of like your answer to Aster M. What is there to understand? MVC is putting too much info in one class. It's bad. It's not that people don't understand and go VVM. Exactly. Like you once you work at a place and you see that, oh, you actually want to separate your code, and you realize MVC is not a good idea. It's I think I'm getting worked up on this whole architecture thing. CoreML. When was the last time I made a CoreML video? A long time ago. Do you know and use clean? I actually don't even know what solid is actually. What is this? Let me try to see. Solid, the S stands for single responsibility. Ooh, the O. What does the O stand for? I can't remember. L is this weird Lipschitz. I can't remember what the L is either. The I is inversion of control maybe. D, dependency injection, probably. Yeah. So as you can see, again, anytime you see an acronym for something, be very, very suspicious about, even if you should learn this acronym. Just yeah. Work at a bank and use his approach Indeed, MVVM. Yeah. You typically just, like, some guy has an approach, he implements it in the original solution, and that architecture pattern is the same process everyone follows. That's typically how it goes. Okay, so Peter Ivich has a question, and I think it's a good question. So as myself as a professional, would I hire a junior developer that knows these things: AVKit, core data, user tutorials or defaults, auto layout, no storyboard, JSON, XML parsing, OOP, MVC, MVVM a little bit? I think what do I want to say here? I think this is listing out these skills I think is okay, but you also want to be able to demo how you use these things. Just listing them out is not enough in 2019. You want to have a couple of very, very impressive portfolio apps. If you don't have those, then listing these things out, I feel like, is a little empty, a little meaningless to just list these skills out. And as a professional, I can look at an application and kind of break it down and see what you did here, how you use MVC here versus MVVM, what is the layout structure that you use in this table thing, and how do you store your data offline, and how do you actually access the server data. Like, you can see all this very quickly as like a veteran developer. It's easy to break down, and we'll kind of ask you questions based on that. So I truly love, Rayhan Ali says that, I truly love doing it through code, and most of the time I use SnapKit for auto layout. Recently I feel this is too much, and what about pure native? Building pure auto layout for myself. Yeah, I feel like SnapKit is a little bit overkill for just a layout library. The other day I was doing some research on other different approaches to making auto layout and making layout code easier to follow. There are some really good ideas out there about, like, how to build a language that you can, it's more of an expressive layout language, which is often referred to as like a DSL. And the Lishkov substitution principle. Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that principle, actually. I think it's overkill. Again, the solid thing is typically overkill. In Russia, it's obligatory to know every word meaning of solid. Yeah, I've read this also. It seems like a lot of people really subscribe to the solid philosophy. Yeah, Joey is like, I've been studying Swift in school for about 4 months, and I've been working through your lessons and changing things and trying to add stuff. I've been making tremendous progress. Thank you. Well, that's good. You know, if you really want to become a good software developer, just following the YouTube videos and the courses just really takes. It's not that there's anything special about the videos. You really just need to get exposed to more ideas, and these videos expose you to a lot of different principles of using UI kit to put together an app. That's really all that's there. It's not that the teaching style is any different. Like maybe I'm able to walk you through things a little bit better, but the ultimate thing that you have to really focus on is more exposure to more code. Like if I had this type of resource back in the day, I'm so thankful. Andrew, what's up, man? How am I doing? Things are good. Things are good. Things are good. I think things are good. Yeah. MVC reactive concepts. I think after a while, so just like UI development, it starts to become super trivial. And I guess if you guys are just focused on iOS development, you have to, I guess there's nothing else better to talk about. But the more interesting things to, to consider as a maybe more high level things like, what kind of services are out there to help you support your database, to support like a million different users accessing your service. How do you actually expand that and make that scalable, maintain it so that you can pay for it and afford it, right? So these are things like, AWS, so messaging process or messaging services, Twilio. How do you get push notifications to every device? How do you, keep track of all your notification push service tokens? And where do you keep track of this? How do you make sure that you can email every user whenever they subscribe to something? How do you, show them that they've subscribed to this? If they're, if the application works on their mobile phone, how does it work on the web browser for this user? And, what type of data should be reflected across different platforms? Like, these are the real questions that you have to answer. MVC, MVVM. After a while, that becomes pretty trivial. Not meaning that it's not important, but I think when you're developing on a specific platform, you have kind of these blinders on, and it's very important that there are people that do this. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's very important that sometimes you get really focused on something, like which architecture pattern is good, and then you take a broader perspective on things and you realize, oh, that's not the most important thing to focus on. For learning development skill, would you prefer taking a Udemy course or learning from experience? What would you suggest for coming up with? So I'm strongly against Udemy courses, actually. It's not because I don't like Udemy as a platform, but I feel like you don't really learn that much. Well, I guess you do. There are a lot of really good Udemy courses, and you do learn a whole lot. But I've gotten countless messages about how Udemy just doesn't take you from like knowing the basics to like the next level. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like you can learn everything from the internet for free, and Udemy doesn't really provide you much beyond that, actually. But I think over time, Udemy is getting better. So I'm seeing more and more advanced courses, especially on Swift development. how is the better way to understand how to use constraints by code correctly? Well, you just have to go through it yourself, like for a week. Just like anything with computer science, go through it by yourself with like 20 different examples. And once you do that, you will understand all the benefits of doing it and all the, the negative aspects of using code programmatically or building out your UI. And once you understand the full picture, then you can make a better assessment as to whether or not it's a good thing to do. How long does it take to become a junior to mid? How fast can one be? I'm curious. I know some people did it in 6 months and other in 3 years. So going from a junior developer to a mid, I don't know. It really depends on what your definition of a mid-level developer is. So 6 months. And it also depends on what kind of company you work for. So for example, if you're working at like Google, right? I think everyone's called a software engineer. And then the next level is like a lead. I don't know if they have senior engineers at Google, but I think Netflix, Airbnb, a lot of these companies are really, they don't have this hierarchy in job titles. Could you create a self-sizing table view inside of a table view? So I don't think that's possible. Like self-sizing is not that hard anyways. Okay, so there's a question that you don't get often. What should I use if I want to create both portrait and landscape screens in different designs? So we did this in the Touch of Modern iPad app. So if you want to download the iPad version of Touch of Modern, if you're in the United States, I believe it's available. And so what I did was for the portrait mode, cells were rendered out a little bit thinner, and the spacing was a little bit it was squashed in a little bit, like squished in. And for the landscape, the design was very similar but different because we had more space to work with. So what I did was, a lot of you guys really need to realize this, but everything's like a table view or a collection view. And so all I did was I provided different cells based on whether or not the orientation was portrait or landscape. I think nowadays you might want to check the size class. I think that's what it's called. You might want to check the size class, and if it's the large class, I can't even remember what the correct naming convention is, but you want to provide a different cell based on the size class that you're working with. There's a lot of if checking, and yep, this is what you got to do. So does the website, does lbta.com, does it have any type of membership programming or program per month or per year? So currently the website doesn't have any subscription program. It's just pay as you want per course. And the good thing about that is once you purchase the course, you get access to all of the update to Swift 5. Any bugs that you see, you still have access to like the updated source code to fix those bugs. So it's also a lifetime access to that course that you purchase. You don't have to worry about, your subscription is up, you can still access this stuff. I'm doing URL session multi-form data. At the beginning it's like hell, but finally I found company who gladly to welcome a dev who did everything without Storyboard, and I work for them. Thank you. Nice. Yeah. URL session multi-form posting of data is it's hell if you don't have access to the backend. So if you don't have access to the thing that you're sending the multi-form data to, then it's really hard to figure out why it's not working. Yeah. And one recommendation for multi-part form data is to just use Alamo Fire's multi-part form API. It makes it easier. Keep cheating. I'll try. Yeah, what do I think about Swift 5? I really need to update to Mac OS Mojave to actually start using it. Actually, my laptop has Mojave, and maybe I'll just download it on my laptop instead. Why am I against UI Storyboard or programming the GUI for View Controller? I'm not really against the Storyboard. It's whatever the heck you want to do. Yeah. All right. So the last question we'll answer is Storyboard versus programming. And I'll give my one thought on this topic for today's video, and then we're going to wrap it up and end it. I'll probably head to the gym and play some basketball. So again, no one really gives a bleep to whether or not Storyboard or programming is your thing. Really, no one really cares. If you want to use Storyboard, then go ahead. And if you want to program your UI, then do that. If you're looking for someone to validate whether or not your approach is the right approach, then you're doing it wrong. You should be fully aware, like, what is the problem with using a Storyboard and what is the advantage of using code. You should be fully aware of that before you like really invest your time into one specific way of doing things. And most people don't do that research, and what they figure out later on is, oh yeah, this different approach is actually better. Why didn't I do this from the start? This is the it's a typical process. As you do more and more programming, as you learn more and more, you'll get more exposed to different ideas and different approaches. And that's just the way things are. Nothing wrong with doing one thing one way. It's just the way of life as a software developer. Like, for example, right? You might choose to use like one backend language one day, and working on that backend server for like a year, you find an article that tells you about this other backend server framework that has all these libraries already built out, and you don't need to write the code manually. Then when you see this other framework, this other server-side language, it might be the better thing to just switch over to this different framework and abandon your earlier ways of doing things, which might be wrong. And yeah, it's all about learning. Okay, so I think I don't know are you guys still here? If you guys are still here, if my connection is still working. Do I have any Medium posts? Nope, I do not. Anything that you want to find is on the letsbuildthatapp.com website. And I'll try to update with some different things. There's actually a blog post section on the website, which I haven't really been maintaining all that much. And that's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you so much for joining me in today's live stream. I am going to try to do one live stream every 2 weeks, and we'll see how it goes from there. Again, very glad and just happy to have you join me for today. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.